council thing. Yeah, I have probably 2 copies of it now, but that's great. Better to have two than none, I always say. Three. Is there any good mood today? You're like Phil. Yeah, you're good to go. I'm good to go. Yeah, wedding. So here I was at a funeral service yesterday with my partner. Trust me, he died. So I hadn't seen his daughter like years. Got married. She's in the church. It's really nice. Wonderful. Come back. And doesn't she get broken? God, she was just. It's crazy. It is. Yeah. Please be seated. Colleagues, we're going to start today with the singing of our national anthem, and I'm particularly delighted today that I'll be introducing to you Severia Dib. Now, I'd like to think I discovered Severia, which would be a lie, but I would tell you that some 15 or 17 years ago when I ran the first Rockin' New Year's Eve at Victoria Park after it was going to be canceled, Severia was one of our major entertainers, and you're going to see why. So she was quite young at that time. In fact, now she's a 22-year-old, so you can put the age together if you like. Her sound is a unique blend of R&B, psychedelic soul, and pop. She formed the band Day Trip in 2017, taking up singing at a young age of 8, which is, I think, when I discovered her, I'd like to think, and the guitar and songwriting at 14. Severia has performed all over Canada, ranging from festivals, charities, radio stations, and TV. Severia was enrolled in a music production program in college, which sparked the love for producing her own unique sound. She was the chosen artist for CTV's The Launch Season 2. Severia's song, Down to the Roots, has charted #3 on iTunes Canada and plays around the country on Hot AC Radio. This year has taken her to bigger stages, such as iHeartRadio FanFest in Toronto, Festival d'Eté La Ville de Québec, and Cavendish Beach Festival in PEI. And you know, when you only need to go by a first name, that's how famous you are. Please help me welcome Severia. And please stand.
Oh. and native land. True patriot love in all thy sons command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north, strong and free. From far and wide, oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God, keep our land glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Ladies and gentlemen, Severia. The City of London is committed to making every effort to provide alternate formats and communication supports for council, standing, or advisory committee meetings and information upon request. To make a request for any city service, please contact accessibility@london.ca or 519-661-2489, extension 2425. For the benefit of all, the council break for dinner will be approximately 6:30 p.m. as required. And I will now ask for any disclosures of pecuniary interest. Councilor Turner.
Good evening, Your Worship. I'd like
Good
to
evening.
declare a pecuniary interest on item 3.2, which I think is item 17 in the 9th report of the Committee of Community and Protective Services Committee, which respect to adult entertainment licensing, as I supervise employees who are responsible for the inspection of such facilities, and the related bylaw 316.
So noted. Thank you. Any other declarations of conflict or disclosure of pecuniary interest? Councilor Morgan.
Yes, I'd like to disclose an interest on item 5.1 of the the Corporate Services Committee report, which is the appointment to the London Hydro Board of Directors. One of the candidates has a direct role in my performance appraisal at my employer at Western University.
So noted. Any other disclosures? Thank you. Seeing none, I have several recognitions, if I might please. First, we've all been particularly touched by the issues of Woodman Avenue, and as we know, in the late hours of August 14th and early hours of August 15th, our city responded to a significant life-changing event. We responded with speed, with resolve, and with professionalism. Our response was so well executed that we achieved the unimaginable for an event of this magnitude. We prevented loss of human life. I'm so proud of everyone in this city who came together in a moment of crisis and worked tirelessly to support the residents of Woodman Avenue in their darkest hour. I'd like to thank the following in particular for the important role they played in helping our city navigate this tragic explosion. I know I speak for all council and all Londoners when I begin by acknowledging the efforts of our first responders. You know, the words thank you don't even begin to capture the depth of our gratitude. As others ran away from the explosion, they ran towards it, risking their own safety in the process. A total of 6 first responders were treated in hospital that night. The most seriously injured among them was released only a few days ago, and he continues to recover at home, and I would ask that you keep him in your prayers. To all of those first responders who were injured, you remain in our thoughts and prayers. Your service matters. We will not soon forget your efforts, nor that of any of your colleagues over those days. I also want to say a few words about our City of London staff, along with staff from numerous local agencies and services, all whom work tirelessly, many with little rest, and even less recognition. The level of coordination was staggering, the dedication inspiring, the results amazing. At the very least, let me personally thank City of London services, including housing, social services, building services, roads operation, engineering, the city manager's office, the clerks, purchasing, finance, risk, community centers, which were used as reception centers, neighborhood services, parks and recreation, security, communications, and of course, fire services and emergency management. This was an all of city commitment, but it also included the London Police Service, EMS, London Hydro, Enbridge, the Middlesex London Health Unit, London Health Sciences Service, St. Joseph's Hospital, Canadian Mental Health Association, the London Transit Commission, the London Animal Care and Control, Red Cross, London Air Community Health Centre. We always run a risk when we provide a long list of individual organizations that there may be a few that have not been acknowledged. We hope we haven't missed anyone, but do know regardless that you take the thanks of this council and the gratitude of this city. Because we're a community that is committed to emergency preparedness. We plan for the unexpected. We practice our response. And in all that we do, collaboration is key. When our community experienced an emergency, we were ready. We can take great pride and comfort in that. The crisis has been overcome. It is now time to rebuild. And I'd like to thank all of you, literally, for giving your all. We are a grateful community. I know that Deputy Mayor Jesse Helmer would like to speak to the events that took place in his ward and what he has observed in the days since this tragedy unfolded. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and very well said. I'm going to try to not repeat your excellent remarks, but I do want to say to the first responders and the city staff, especially Lynn, Henry, Patty, and Sean, who are getting phone calls from me between midnight and 2 o'clock. Thank you so much for the initial response. It was exemplary. I wanted to say to the media too, and this doesn't get said very often, but I think the media has done a really good job of covering what happened and balancing the need to inform people about what's happening and also the privacy of the people who have been impacted. And I wanted to say that. The businesses and communities who have donated, community members who have donated since the initial 10,000 that came in from Libro, it's just gone off like a rocket. We're over $150,000 donated to support the folks who are directly impacted. I think that's remarkable. I know people continue to contribute. Just this morning, Tim Hortons was putting in $33,000 from all the owners in the city and Tim Hortons corporate. I just wanted to say, I think it shows how generous people can be in a crisis when they want to help their neighbors out, and they all step up in an organized way. I'm wearing a t-shirt here. It says "It Takes a Village." This is made by Ilbury and Goose. They put them up to sell them, and all the proceeds go to the Libro Fund. I think they're up to 1,000 t-shirts sold already. They just arrived this morning, and I think it's a good message, right? That it takes a village message. It certainly does, and I wanted to commend everybody who responded right away. The community members who, were, like me, were over at the scene, trying to help people out. Just do whatever you could to get supplies to the first responders or people who are going and getting water and bringing it by to make sure the firefighters had water while they were staying there all night fighting the fire. Some members of the community didn't even sleep overnight. They're just there all day long trying to figure out what they could do. And the community response since then has been amazing. You know, trying to handle all the donations of goods that were coming in, processing that, getting it to people, collecting the money, and then dispersing it in a way. About $50,000 has already gone out to the folks who are most severely impacted, and doing it in a way that is supportive of what they actually need. So, as it turns out, you know, when you're displaced from your home, you don't really want a whole pile of stuff right away. You're trying to figure out where you're going to be staying and how you're going to get back into your homes. And getting people cash to help in the short term is really important. I think it's remarkably lucky and a testament to the emergency response that nobody was killed. I want to say to the first responders and the community members who responded right away, job well done. I talked to a fellow who helped get his 90-year-old neighbors out of their house just before it exploded, the house exploded. And I said, you know, you're a hero. And he said, no, like anyone would have done that, right? And I think that testifies to the commitment of the people in the neighborhood and how they responded, how they continue to respond. I just want to say I'm really proud of the community and of London.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'll call on Councillor Anna Hopkins to make some comments, please.
Thank you, Your Worship, for recognizing me. I know for some of us that have had a hard time getting back from AMO, it's good to be back home. And I just want to say a few words on behalf of AMO. First of all, thank you for allowing me to serve chairing the Large Urban Caucus. And it really is a pleasure to do so. I know AMO had about over 2,400 delegates in Ottawa last week, and we as a city had 9 delegations with the ministers and party leaders, and it really was a great opportunity to work with my colleagues as well as with staff as a team representing London. It really was a pleasure to have that team aspect. I just want to also acknowledge Councillor Turner and Councillor Pelosa for the work that they did. Councillor Turner doing a great job. We left the luncheon all certified, knowing how to administer Noxolin, and it was a really engaging and learning experience. And Councillor Pelosa for doing the workshop on climate change, and also to Jane Stanford as well for doing the breakfast on waste management. If anyone can make you passionate about waste, it is him. And I just want to also acknowledge Adam Thompson and Nick Steinberg and Liradonna Ravina for keeping us all organized as well. They do a great job. And I just want to let my colleagues know that next year AMO is in Ottawa. We will be doing the reception because in 2021 it is coming to London as well as in 2023. So it's going to be exciting for us as a city to showcase the great city that we have here. So thank you.
Colleagues, staff, gallery members, tonight we recognize 2 exceptional young Londoners who are honored recipients of the Queen Elizabeth Scholarship Award from the City of London. The scholarship provides $2,000 to 2 distinguished students to use as they embark on the next chapter in their lives, post-secondary education. Tonight we acknowledge Alex Guo of Oak Ridge Secondary School, who completed his final year of high school, wait for this, with a 99.83% average. Now, my Cape Breton mother would have said, what happened to the 0.17? But to you, I would say, Alex, bravo. You're pursuing your passion of studying math, computer science, and chemistry at the University of Waterloo. Come on over. You're no stranger to accolades. I know that you've already won contests in the areas of his expertise, math, biology, and chemistry. By the way, when you get 99.83, like, what did you miss? My colleagues wanted to know, was there just a little something? Well, English.
Oh, darn.
I think you're doing all right. In addition to the Queen Elizabeth Scholarship, Alex is also the recipient of the University of Waterloo National Math Scholarship. I know that this Londoner is bound for great things, and we're so proud of his accomplishments. Please join me congratulating Alex to receive his certificate of accomplishment, his check for $2,000, and perhaps most importantly, gratitude and appreciation for making London so proud. Here we are, sir. So, just to have our colleagues see what that is. Check, I mean, no, I'm kidding. You think that's tremendous. Congratulations, Alex. Ladies and gentlemen, Alex Quo. Now, our second recipient, Emma Travinka, can't be with us tonight, but let me tell you a little bit about her as well. Emma graduated from Catholic Central with a 99.16% average. I'm exhausted thinking about these numbers here. She loves art, biology, and chemistry, and will be starting her next chapter at the University of Guelph. As an accomplished artist, Emma's abilities have been celebrated as the 2018 and 2019 Royal Canadian Legion poster contest winner. She's also a three-time recipient of the CCH Gold Medal Award. No kidding. City of London staffers may recognize Emma from her summer jobs working with City Parks and Recreation at the camps in both Lambeth and in South London. We wish Emma all the very best as she begins her studies at Guelph. Ladies and gentlemen, although she's not here, please join me in a warm round of congratulations for our two Queen Elizabeth Scholarship recipients, Alex Quo and Emma Travinka. Congratulations. Now, since we're all in the mood to say nice things about a lot of people, and for a lot of very good reasons, I'm actually delighted to share that tonight's recognition, in that it includes a wonderful team of our City of London staff being recognized for their exemplary work during the 2018 elections. By the way, there's no one behind me that thought that the 2018 election was a bad decision, it would seem. So we're pleased to have us with us, Michelle Kakavecchia Summers, of the Association of Municipal Clerks and Treasurers of Ontario, AMCTO for those who would prefer the acronym. She's here to present the City of London with the E.A. Danby Award, Certificate of Merit for the 2018 ranked ballot election. So can I ask you to come forward, please, Michelle, and then we still have a few more words to say. Michelle, come on forward. So this recognition celebrates outstanding achievement in improving performance in the category of implementation of legislation by a municipality with a population of 20,000 or more, so we qualify. While I'm told that I'm accepting the award on behalf of the city, it has zero to do with me. In fact, it's our 2018 municipal elections team that deserves 100% of the credit for a job well done. And in fact, I'm not going to accept it. What I'm going to do, Kathy Saunders, you need to come forward, please. And as I'm led by our city clerk, who likes the limelight, we know, not. Let's ask a few folks to join us from her team. Sarah Corman, Jeannie Raycroft, Rob Hicks, Audrey Pasquale, Yu Zhang, Kevin Woe, and we know that Kirsten Campbell and Glenn Tucker aren't here, but please come on all the way around, folks. Ladies and gentlemen, these are the recipients of the E.A. Danby Award Certificate of Merit. Congratulations to all of them. And Michelle, I'm sure you can say this much more articulately, better than I can. So why don't I ask you to come forward and make a few comments, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm very pleased to be able to be here this afternoon on behalf of the Board of Directors of the Association of Municipal Managers, Clerks, and Treasurers of Ontario to present the City of London with the AMCTO's E.A. Danby Certificate of Merit for 2019. This certificate, which is named after the association's first president, recognizes outstanding performance and innovative practices. It is presented to a municipality that demonstrates an initiative or a willingness to explore innovative techniques that produce tangible results for that municipality. The City of London did just that by adopting a new voting system for the 2018 municipal election, which successfully implemented the first ranked ballot election in Canada. This was the first example of a move away from the traditional first-past-the-post voting system and allowed voters to be able to choose and rank their top 3 candidates in order of preference. The city invested in new technology, and work conducted by the City of London Elections Office included the development of a new ballot design, an entirely new education campaign that informed voters that for the first time, they had the option to rank up to 3 candidates and that a winner needed to receive 50% plus 1. In addition, the way that the votes were counted for this ranked ballot election was entirely different and required significant staff resources to develop policies and procedures that would align with Ontario's new regulations. I believe that one of the most important factors of the city's success was the efforts made by your staff to get into the community to ensure that electors were informed of the new ranked choice method so that they were prepared when they visited the polls on election day. The City of London election staff spent countless hours giving presentations and running mock ranked ballot elections in order to educate and spread awareness amongst the voters. This experience of the City of London has produced valuable lessons learned that can be shared with all of the other clerks in Ontario's municipalities. This has paved the way for other municipalities to utilize London's experience as a model for success in order to implement their own ranked ballot election in the future. On behalf of the AMCTO Board of Directors, it's my pleasure to recognize the achievements of the City of London and present the city with the E.A. Danby Certificate of Merit for 2019.
Council is officially out of control. I'm not aware of any confidential matters to be considered in public, therefore I will look for a motion to go into closed session. Councillor Van Hol, seconded by Councillor Van Meerbergen. Let's turn your attention to the screen as we vote, if we can get the attention of those who are otherwise engaged. Can we just do that?
Your Worship, there are 2 additional reasons as a result of last evening's SPPC meeting, and they're a matter pertaining to trade secrets or scientific, technical, commercial, financial, or labor relations information supplied in confidence to the municipality local board, which, if disclosed, could reasonably be expected to prejudice significantly the competitive position or interfere significantly with the contractual or other negotiations of a person, groups of persons, or organizations, a matter pertaining to identifiable individual employment-related matters, advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose, advice or recommendations of officers and employees of the corporation, including communications necessary for that purpose, and for the purpose of providing instructions and directions to officers and employees of the corporation. And secondly, a matter pertaining to proposed or pending acquisition of land by the municipality, including communications necessary for that purpose, advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, commercial and financial information that belongs to the municipality and has monetary value or potential monetary value, and a position plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on by or on behalf of the municipality.
After all of that, we turn your attention to the screen as we vote.
Closing the vote, and the motion carries 15-0.
I'll ask council please to move to committee room 3. Please be seated. Colleagues, I'm looking for a motion to approve the minutes from the meeting held July 30, 2019, to be put on the floor. Moved by Councillor Van Meerberg and seconded by Councillor Turner. Any discussion? Then let's turn your attention to the screen as we vote.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 15-0.
Thank you very much. I'll bring to your attention that there are 3 communications on the agenda, and I'll ask for a motion to receive them. Councillor Kayabага, seconded by Councillor Hillier. Any discussion? Then we'll call the question. Your attention to the screen, please.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 15-0.
Thank you, colleagues. There are no motions to which notice is given, so I'll turn your attention to the reports and the 14th report of the Planning Environment Committee. Pleased to acknowledge Councillor Hopkins.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would be pleased to present the 14th report of the Planning and Environment Committee. I have been asked to pull number 9. I have not heard from anyone else. So.
Any other items that colleagues wish to deal with for discussion? Thank you, Councillor Hopkins.
So I would like to put the remaining items on the floor. And if Your Worship would allow me, I would like to make 2 comments on 2 items. The first item is the number 5, 2.4, which is the green roof area and landscape open space requirements. I know I've had a couple of my colleagues ask me questions about that item, and from what I understand, we are with this direction, just removing it from the deferred list. It came from an inquiry from a former councillor to look at introducing a bylaw to look at green roofs, and staff are suggesting that we, if we are going to look at zoning bylaws introducing green roofs, that we look at it through the Rethink project. So if I can ask staff, just a quick update on timelines when we can expect that program coming forward.
To staff.
Through the mayor, the councillor is correct. We have suggested that this will be dealt with through both the Rethink zoning bylaw project and through the development of the city's green city strategy. The zoning bylaw project is intended to kick off later this year and hopefully have a draft bylaw in front of you by the end of 2021. And the green city strategy is on our work plan for next year to be done through 2020.
Any other comments and or questions with respect to the items on the floor, with the exception of item 9? Councillor Lewis.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you, I want to thank Councillor Hopkins for the information she's provided to me on the green roof, and to Councillor Pelosa. I know she's asked some similar questions on this. I'm glad to hear that we are moving forward on this. I will be frank, I'm a little concerned to hear 2021 before we have a bylaw in front of us with all of the applications we have coming forward, site plans for the downtown core. I understand that we want to get it right when we do it, and that there are some complexities around green roofs, because there are more than one type of green roof. But I think that sooner is better. So just through you to staff, encourage that anything that we can do to move this along is great, because we are unfortunately missing opportunities already in site plans that are coming forward. So hopefully that can be dealt with. I also wanted to take an opportunity to ask Councillor Hopkins if she can perhaps provide a little more information on item 12, which was 3.4, the heritage places and the description of potential heritage conservation districts. I wonder if, because there was a very extensive list, as I recall, it was 14, or perhaps it was 11 new proposed areas for heritage conservation district studies. And while I appreciate the desire to take a look at our built heritage, it seems to me that when we're dealing with such a number, we're actually looking at studies that are going to take us, well, frankly, well beyond the time that I intend to be here on council, and I suspect that any of us will be here, because it seems to me like we're talking about decades down the road. So is there a reason that we decided to go ahead with so many on this list, as opposed to taking the highest priority ones and focusing on them for the immediate time?
I thought I heard two questions there. Was there a question, Mr. Barrett, with respect to timing on the green roofs, or was that just a comment?
That was just a comment.
Thank you very much.
On the
Then
green roofs.
Councillor Hopkins, please, and appreciate that.
Thank you, Councillor Lewis, for raising that question. I was going to make a comment on number 12, 3.4, which is the new adoption of the Heritage Places 2.0. And we are adopting a new heritage place. We're looking at 4 areas as candidates to be designated. We're not designating these 14 areas right now, but we are looking at a possibility. I know we've also heard from the community regarding the North Talbot, from the North Talbot community, and looking at that being designated. And I would like to ask Mr. Barrett, since he is here, if he could just give us a little bit about the process and what we're looking at moving forward. Mr. Barrett.
Mr. Barrett.
Thank you. Through your worship, yes, the Heritage Places 2.0 document is actually to replace this one, and the councillor is correct. Heritage Places was approved by council in 1993. It too had 14 areas worked on for us to go through, and in that time, areas actually were added. We've done ones that were not on this list. We've changed the priorities, the order that was on this list. So council asked us back in 2017 to revisit this, which resulted in Heritage Places 2.0, which gave us 14 new ones with the priorities. And those priorities are based on our priority to attack them and to prepare the plans. They provide council with a list of those ones that are there and the criteria that we'd be looking at to actually designate those properties. It is a daunting task. It's one that takes us many years to go through, but it takes many years to go through because these are all actually developed with a lot of community consultation. We usually spend almost a year in preparing just the outline for the plan, and then a year to actually develop the plan, because there's a lot of consultation with communities to even confirm the boundaries and what are the areas and what would you call that district. So that is the process that we'll be going on. This will be our work plan for the next number of years. And to the point with respect to the priorities, this did confirm that the North Talbot neighborhood is the priority, and that would be the first one that would be done now with the adoption of this document. That puts that firmly in place as the next neighborhood to be reviewed and looked at.
Thank you, Councillor Lewis. May you live forever. Councillor Lehman, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just trying to understand the difference between a building that would be designated as a heritage building versus a building that is in a heritage district. If you could explain to me the differences there and the different, as they would apply to a homeowner making a change to their house that isn't designated as a heritage building, but it is in the district.
Mr. Barrett.
Thank you. Through the mayor. The designation of a heritage conservation district is under a different part of the Ontario Heritage Act. So an individual structure is a part 4, and there's a designation that speaks to the specifics of that property and what the important elements would be. And then alterations to that property would have to be respectful of what's actually in that specific designation. As it relates to a property that would be designated by being part of a district, that's the value of the plan, and that's why these plans take so long, because they essentially provide for different classifications of properties within them. Some of the earlier plans have identified some properties as being contributing and other properties as being different priorities within the district. And then the plan itself would set out what the strategy would be and what the intervention would be required. In most instances, it deals with just the facade of the building. So it's very limited. It doesn't touch interior features, and it deals with how the building would contribute. So it's a more general review, and the level of rigor that you would look at for an alteration is much different.
Councillor Lehman?
As the London plan indicates, and as we've talked about the importance of high density, especially in the downtown area, can you tell me how development would be affected for high density in a heritage district, which might require the removal of some buildings within that district to build a high density building?
Mr. Barrett?
Thank you. Through your worship, actually, that's a great question, because downtown is a heritage conservation district, and downtown is also the site of perhaps the greatest concentration of new high-rise construction. So a heritage conservation district does not preclude high-density development. What it does do, it provides a context for that. Some instances, the design, how that building addresses the street has been a consideration, and that's what comes out of the heritage conservation plan. It talks about what context you look at, what features you would look at to try to incorporate the new development to be respectful of the development that's around it.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Van Holst?
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Also commenting on this item, and to you, Madam Chair. Of course, not every neighborhood aspires to be a heritage district. And during the CIP consultations for Hamilton Road, there was a vote, and it was overwhelmingly against having that be a heritage district, because they're looking for renewal, not to keep it the same.
So noted. Back to you, Councillor Hopkins. Councillor Pelosi?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just ever so briefly into item 3.2, as it's a application for Meg Drive in Ward 12. It's not often when people reach out to me and they actually don't have a problem. That when I followed up with them of if they needed any assistance with the application, they said staff was already great. They could not have asked for anything more, and they made it so easy and were so great of assistance. So I just want to thank staff for that I was of no use, and it was wonderful.
Nice to get those. Any other comments or questions for staff or for the councillor? Councillor Hopkins?
I see no further comments from my colleagues, so I will put the items on the floor.
With the exception of item 9.
With the exception of 9.
Although we'll turn your attention to the screen as we vote.
Closing the vote, and the motion carries 15-0.
Councillor Hopkins?
I'd like to put number 9. It's a delegation request that we received on for 1738 Hamilton Road.
Comments or questions? Seeing none, we'll call the question.
Closing the vote, and the motion carries 14-1.
Thank you, Councillor Hopkins. Councillor Cassidy, 9th report of the Community Protective Services Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There was a conflict declared on item number 17 in the council agenda, and I haven't been requested by anybody to pull anything else.
Any other items for separate deliberation? Seeing none. Councillor Cassidy.
So I will put all items on the floor except for item number 17, which is also 3.2 from the committee report. It's the adult live entertainment parlor location at 2190 Dundas Street.
So noted. Councillor Squire.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, I just wanted to speak to number 18, which is the public nuisance bylaw amendments, which has been going on for a significant period of time. And I know that the final report was prepared and submitted to committee, which may not be everything that people wanted in a bylaw in terms of holding the actual owners of property responsible for events that are happening on their property. But we are limited by laws, and we're limited by what we can do. I was heartened that after the Association of Renters that had opposed this bylaw, after we conceded that we couldn't do everything they were in contact me and said they understood the issue and they would be endeavoring to educate all of their clients, members, in the proper way to draft leases. So clauses were included to deal with these kind of issues happening on properties, nuisance parties, so that people could ultimately be evicted if that was something they did. And they seem committed to that, and I hope to meet with them on an ongoing basis. But I think, it's very fitting we're doing this just before we hit the Labor Day weekend and students returning to Western and Fanshawe. There's been an extraordinary amount of effort put in over the past year by all of the stakeholders, particularly Western University, its student council, and its administration, both of whom have reached out to me as the ward councillor on many occasions to discuss this issue and see how we could do better going forward. And the staff has done a very good job of keeping the community informed. We had one public meeting. We're going to be having another one on September 12th to report on everything we have done and can do. And I think what that's done is created in the community a feeling that we can do better and the student community can do better. However, people have to understand that relying on laws and rules is one thing, but it really involves a sense of community, and students are a part of our community. I represent a huge amount of students at Western University, and it's important to me that people recognize the good work that they do in the City of London almost every day. But conversely, they have to recognize that behavior that maybe a few are undertaking reflects on them also. And I think they have done that and they understand that. And university administration does that. So I really want to say that moving forward, fingers crossed, that things continue to develop in a positive way. But a big thanks to the people who have come together on this issue. And it's been a pleasure to work with university administration. The student council is always great to work with. Great leadership. And our staff, Mr. Katolik takes a lot of heat when things don't go well. We all know that. He's recovering now from a bee sting that sent him into anaphylactic shock, I understand, and we all wish him well. I know he's doing better. But he does it in a way that's very methodical, very comprehensive, and I want to thank him for that. Moving forward, we hope we'll have a better day on homecoming. But if we don't, we'll just keep working at it. And I firmly believe that things will get better. So here's where we are. Hopefully where we're going is positive also.
Well, I think you take the good wishes of all of council for all of our sakes. And well said, Councillor Squire. Deputy Mayor Helmer.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask through the chair, there's a correspondence that we had on the agenda for council related to 9, which is 2.10, the RFP for animal services. The suggestion from the folks in the community was to split it and re-tender it, and I wonder if our staff could just respond to that idea. I know the recommendation is to accept the tenders.
Mr. Kostovas.
Through the chair, I appreciate the request, but we did bundle it together with the animal welfare contract. We put it as an option to see if there was some sort of economy of scale. It actually worked out quite well. There were significant savings, and we believe the service actually level will be enhanced by doing and combining the services under one one operator, and to split it out at this point in time would be extremely problematic.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to make a brief comment on 15, which is 2.6, Vimy Ridge Park. I just want to say good work to Councillor Lewis and the folks in the community who've been pushing for this for quite some time.
So noted. Thank you. Councillor Van Holst.
Thank you, Your Worship. I wanted to address number 19, which is London's film and media industry update. And through you to our staff, I had a chance to speak with Ted Ramey on the weekend, the man I know who has the most experience in the film industry. He was suggesting that what London needs at this time is something like a location manager, somebody who has got the database of all the locations that we have and can respond to an email from a scout, say, who might ask, do you have an old house in a pretty looking neighborhood? And they can send half dozen pictures and say, these are the things we've got. This is approximately the prices, where your staff could park, and if it's rural, where you could get power for that. And also be able to welcome somebody who's looking at a tour. You know, welcome, Mr. Producer is willing to spend millions of dollars in our community. I arranged a tour of a couple of the locations you were interested in and made a reservation for lunch so we can talk about how we can make this an easy process for you. So that's what the suggestion. I think that may be helpful and also very much in line with what staff's working on right now. I want to thank the committee and the mayor for their very enthusiastic support of this. It's a file I will remain working on no matter what. Thanks.
Thank you. I didn't hear a question there, but we acknowledge your comments. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Lewis, please.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you, first I will echo my colleague Councillor Van Holst's appreciation of the staff's work and the ongoing efforts on the film industry. It was a very interesting presentation, and looking forward to the opportunities that may come forward for our community out of that. Colleagues, if you didn't have a chance, perhaps watch the YouTube copy of our committee meeting. It's very informative. It was quite interesting. I wanted to, however, also mention a couple of other items in the agenda tonight from Community and Protective Services, and those would be both items 7 and 12 in your agenda. That's 2.8 and 2.13 with regard to the East London Community Centre and the ongoing work there. I want to say thank you to Mr. Stafford and his entire team, who's been working very, very hard. We are behind, but they are doing their very best to help us have this facility ready as soon as possible for the community's enjoyment. And one of the pieces here in 2.8 is the tender for the work in the park itself outside the building, moving ahead with that so we have space usable for the community next summer as Canada Day arrives and as activities for the kids when they're out of school next year. I'm sure they're not looking forward to going back next week, but next summer they'll have something to look forward to there. I did also want to touch briefly on item 15, that's 2.6. This was a very heavy Ward 2 focused agenda for Community and Protective Services. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Helmer, for your comments, but I have to say that the real kudos go to all the members in the community, including the members of the Royal Canadian Legion and the 427 Air Force Association Wing, who were very instrumental in the public consultation on this. Again, to Mr. Stafford and particularly Mr. McPherson and Mr. McGonigal on his team for their efforts coming out, meeting with the community, in the community, listening to the community feedback on this. When it comes to our veterans, we've got a very unique little developing area in Argyle with the Charlie Fox Memorial Overpass and the recent return of the Missing Man Formation sculpture, which, Your Worship, I know you were at with myself and Councillor Van Holst, and that sculpture is actually at the pinpoint where Ward 1, Ward 2, and Ward 4 intersect. I'm sure Councillor Helmer would have been pleased to join us, except for the fact that I believe he was on his honeymoon at that time. So I think that the veterans would excuse him for being absent for that reason. And then, of course, we have Trooper Wilson Place, just to the north of this, which remembers Mark Wilson, one of our Canadian Forces members who lost his life in our service in Afghanistan. And his parents and his brother were actually recently involved in preparing to attend the revealing or the recommemoration of the Afghanistan War Memorial. So we can never say thank you to our veterans enough, and Vimy Ridge Park is just one way that we will continue to honor their service. For the veterans of World War I, they have passed on, but they have passed that torch to us, and we have to remember lest we forget.
Well said, Councillor Lewis. Councillor Plaza.
Thank you, Your Worship, and just wanting to thank all those involved with item 2.4 in regards to the White Oaks Park and the multi-purpose stage that we're undergoing development with. The Community Council of White Oaks had a vision in that community over 30 years ago, and it's now coming to full fruition of the stage that they wanted being built in that area. It was actually a privately funded community center in the beginning, and it's since expanded. So thank you to them for decades of work on this, to our staff for their determination in dealing with such multifaceted approach, as this is a completely privately funded donation to the city of $300,000, that it involves our donation policies in regards to community consultation as we move forward, and to York Development, as one of the members is from that area of the community and wanted to give back and saw this project as being appropriate and brought their associated builders and architects to the table to help us have a vision for the city and build it. So thank you at council tonight for your support of this as we move forward.
Thank you. Seeing no one else on our list, back to you, Councillor Cassidy.
So that's the report, except for item 17 on the floor.
It is duly moved. Did you know, I noticed in my almost 9 months in this capacity that I've had a chance to hear, and there are more thanks and shout outs to community and protective services than probably any place on the planet, except for the committees of Councillor Hopkins, Squire, and others. Turn your attention to the screen as we vote, please.
Closing the vote and the motion carries 14 with 1 recuse.
Councillor Cassidy.
And I will put item 17 on the floor, and one of our colleagues has declared a conflict on that item.
That's why I kind of went.
Councillor Turner, do you want to add something?
Your Worship, it seems I was lost in the excitement and didn't realize that the entire portion was being put forward, not 17, which is 17 is the part that I'm supposed to recuse on, and I recused on the balance by accident. So, I'm identifying that. We could either ask for reconsideration, or we could just carry on and just have identified it, which is probably my preference, but I'm not sure if that's what we need to do from a procedural standpoint.
Let's ask the clerk if procedurally we can do that.
Through your worship, the only concern I would have is that the municipal act states that you can only recuse when you have a conflict. However, it's up to council how they wish to proceed.
Pleasure of council, Councillor Salee.
I'll just move reconsideration so we can just get to where we need to get.
It's quicker, I think so. Seconder after that, Councillor Lewis. Let's turn your attention to the screen as we vote for reconsideration. We are. It says planning and environment colleagues, but we didn't mean it. So the clerk never makes mistakes, so just, nor did my mother, so, you know, it's, we'll fix that though. Colleagues, in a moment, we'll take a restab at that vote.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 15-0.
Councillor Cassidy.
So I will put the entire 9th report of Community and Protective Service Committee on the floor with all the kudos and thanks and good wishes and fellowship, minus item number 17.
Is that okay by you, Councillor Turner? Just wanted to be sure, okay.
When I step on your foot.
Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, we'll turn your attention to the screen, please, as we vote.
Closing the vote, and the motion carries 15-0.
Councillor Cassidy.
So I will put item 17, the adult live entertainment parlor location, on the floor.
Comments or questions? Councillor Kaibaga.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. I'd like to ask staff a little bit more information because I know that this happened when I wasn't here, I was away. More information on why we're taking the license away.
The request has been made for a little bit of additional background as to why this is being dealt with. Did I clarify that, Councillor? Who would like to? Would that be you, Mr. Cotsford? Who would be responding to that? Mr. Cotsford, please.
Through the chair, so this property is the one located at, I believe it's at 2190 Dundas, which is at the east end of town. The property has since been sold, and the purchaser of the property has not extended the lease to the previous license owner. So without any vested interest in the property, the license can't be granted to that individual. So we are recommending that the license be removed from the list of locations and off the map. So the bylaw needs to be amended to do so.
So noted, which effectively reduces the number of adult live entertainment parlors by 1. And that current amount then would rest at what number, please?
I believe the number is now 3.
Thank you very much. Any other comments or questions for, with respect to this issue? Seeing none, we'll call the question.
Closing the vote, and the motion carries 14 with 1 recused.
Thank you, Councillor Cassidy. The 16th report of the Corporate Services Committee, Councillor Morgan.
Yes, I would like to put items 1 through 5 on the floor. I have a conflict on the 6th item, so I won't be presenting that piece. I don't know if anybody wants any of the things dealt with separately, but no one indicated that in advance, so
Any other comments wish to be dealt with separately? Councillor Van Meerbergen.
Thank you, Mayor. I would request that number 3 on our agenda tonight, which is 2.2 from the committee agenda, be addressed separately.
Noted. Any other items? Councillor Morgan.
Okay, I'll put 1, 2, 4, and 5 on the floor for consideration then.
Comments or questions? Seeing none, call the question.
Closing the vote and the motion carries 15-0.
Councillor Morgan.
Item 3 that was asked to be pulled is the website redesign development implementation for the City of London. I'll put that on the floor.
Comments or questions? Councillor Van Meerbergen.
Thank you, Mayor. It strikes me, this particular department of the city, the IT department, is very well endowed, very well resourced. It has, as memory serves, an operating budget of about $17 million or thereabouts per year, and that doesn't include capital, with an employment force of around 70 individuals, 70 employees. It strikes me that this kind of work should be able to be handled in-house. And if the expertise isn't there, then it should be arranged in the sense that I'm sure websites need tweaking on a fairly regular basis, and obviously has to have some form of full reboot from time to time. So again, when the department is so well resourced with cash and employees, it seems that going out with a $500,000 contractual ask is really superfluous in terms of an extra expense. I think you can make the argument that if we're going to go out for this, then we could go out for a lot more and contract quite a bit more from this department. So I think this is something, as we go into the 4-year budget, that this is certainly a department that, in my view, bears a little more scrutiny.
Is there a question in there, or that's a statement? I'm not hearing a question there, but a statement.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess the question really is, why can this not be arranged to be done in-house, given the resources and employment levels that we have in that department?
Presumably that's a question to staff. Mr. Hayward?
So through the chair, I'll start off in that one of the items that came up at the review session for budget in terms of reductions was the subject of IT, and we're working on that information. The IT area has undergone a number of changes, and if I went through with you all the statistics, I think you'd find out actually that it's not as well resourced as the councillors implied. Also, the budget is largely made up of software licenses and that type of thing. The move with respect to the website in terms of communication is really one of taking it to the next level, moving it to the cloud. I can let Ms. Livingston speak to the specifics of why we're doing what we're doing here. But obviously one of the things of moving to the cloud is that you don't have all the surrounding need for hardware and those types of supports. And also taking it out actually means that it gets supported in another way. But again, that does take some money, but it does reduce the overall impact in terms of what we need to provide internally, other than the money piece. I'll pass it over to Ms. Livingston now.
Ms. Livingston?
Through the chair, I'm happy to add that this is not a tweaking of our current website. It's an entire refresh, redo, if you will. We are at a place of increased resident expectation on how to access our website. It's been identified repeatedly in our customer service research that it is the biggest pain point for dealing with the city, so it is time to do a complete refresh. Also, we have on the horizon increased accessibility standards that this website will need to meet. So it is a significant piece of work. My understanding is our IT resources are deployed to a number of important priorities across the city. So in our view, this is the most efficient way to achieve a complete refresh of our website that meets the needs of our residents and is fully accessible for Londoners.
Thank you. Councillor Lehman.
Thank you. In reading the citizen survey that we were presented with yesterday, I noticed that there was a migration from people contacting the city from phone calls to emails, but pretty flat, 6% using the website for interaction with the city. The websites can be used either for information or an actual interaction, which is the goal of most corporations, to use technology, keeping people out of the loop with emails and phone calls still take a lot of time with staff. It's much more efficient to have a website driving solutions and quicker for the end user. So the question to staff is, through you, Chair, is this website going to be designed more as an information platform or more as a interactive platform for people to get their concerns dealt with quickly and efficiently and easily?
Ms. Livingston.
Through the chair, the intention is to be more responsive and interactive to our community. So we know that more people wish to do transactions on our website, to be able to conduct their business easily and efficiently, and that's one of the intentions and goals of this refresh of our website.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Morgan.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to the comments is irrespective of the need to bring into compliance with AODA by the time frame, there's also components of the website that are built on existing platforms that will come to the end of life support by October of 2020. And so there is a need to refresh those. As well, the public engagement piece of the report is intended to deal with some of the comments that Councillor Lehman made, and that is find out exactly how the public wants to use the website and then build the website so that the use is geared towards the public in the way that they want to interface with the city. And so the public engagement component is a key piece, as well as enhancing the mobile experience on the website, which is a platform that more and more people want to use to access city services rather than traditional desktops. And so there's an opportunity here for engagement with the public to design a website on the platforms that people are now using, and ideally we can see how that will change the way that the public engages with the city in what is becoming a more and more digital platform.
Councillor Cassidy.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I have a question to staff. So we're talking about the complete redesign, which is great news for me, but what about ongoing maintenance and upkeep of the website? Will that be done in-house, or will that also be using outside experts?
Ms. Livingston? Oh.
Sorry. Through the mayor. It's a combination. Ongoing maintenance will be handled externally as well, so that's part of what's in the proposal. There's an opportunity for them to provide ongoing support for us, and we'll continue to work with the provider for the next 3 years so that they stay connected to the website and continue to provide that service and support, and that's part of what's in the proposal.
Thank you, Ms. McCaig.
So I just want to make a couple of comments. Again, I'm really happy to see this happen. I'm not a tech expert, and so sometimes accessing, and I'm sure I've spoken to different staff members over the past 4.5 years, that it can be very frustrating for me, and I'm not a complete completely foreign to technology, but sometimes it's very frustrating for me to access information that I know is there on the city website. So I can't imagine people that are very new at using technology. So I'm pleased to hear this. Website design is a completely different area of expertise. I know what our staff, when we're interacting with IT staff, when there's issues, when we have new software being loaded, for example, or if there is a problem with our technology, I know the work that our staff do to support us, everybody here at City Hall, and I'm very grateful for that work. But again, website design is a particular area of expertise, and in fact, you go to school specifically for that. So I know probably most of the municipal candidates contracted out and hired somebody to do a website for them during the last election campaign. We don't have the expertise, and so we recognize that we have to go there and get the expertise that we need when we need it.
So noted. Thank you, Councillor Cassidy. All I can say is the former federal Minister of Science and Technology, I'm really glad I have an 11 and 12-year-old granddaughter set to make things work. I believe now, without any other questions, we will put this to a vote. Turn your attention to the screen, please.
Closing the vote, and the motion carries 14-1.
Councillor Morgan.
Yes, I'm going to turn it over to Deputy Mayor Helmer to present the final item of the report.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. I'll put item 6, which is 5.1 of the original report, on the floor. This is to appoint Dr. Andy Frymack as the new director for London Hydro's board. As you would recall, the committee's original recommendation was Sarah Shortreed, but after the committee's recommendation before the council meeting, she withdrew her candidacy, and so the committee had to make a second recommendation, and that is Dr. Frymack.
So noted. Comments or questions? Councillor Van Holst.
I'll just, would like to congratulate Sarah Shortreed on receiving a very nice position out west. So she wasn't able to commit to being on the board. However, Andy Frymack will bring a tremendous amount to our board, and also a great connection to Western University, where we work together on research. So I think it's going to be a very symbiotic relationship. Be thrilled to have him on the board.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Then I'll turn your attention to the screen as we vote.
Closing the vote, and the motion carries 14 with 1 recuse.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Morgan. Colleagues.
Oh, I thought you were going to say reports.
That will depend. Colleagues, it's 6:28. I'm very mindful of the time and the witching hour when we have our break at 6:30. I would ask for the pleasure of our committee, whether our council, whether it's your pleasure to work through this or whether we should break at this point. Does anyone have a recommendation? Councillor Salee? Okay, I'm mindful of that. I'm looking for consensus. Is there any challenge to that? Councillor Lewis, what do you think?
Thank you, Your Worship, but I'm mindful of something that both Councillor Pelosa and I just got my hand up faster than she did, so she would be saying the same thing, I'm sure, that we've said before. It's one thing to say work through it, but often 10 minutes becomes 15, becomes 20, becomes half an hour, and we also have our staff to think about, not just ourselves, so I would suggest that we need to take our dinner break as scheduled.
We have some separate views on this. I cannot predict how long the balance of this meeting would go. Reasonably briefly, I'm suspecting, but I think to the point of the councillor, that's a fair comment. Any other comments on this before we make a decision? Councillor Cassidy.
Ms. Mayor, I just wonder if the vice chair could comment. If I didn't attend the meeting, so I have no idea how long it was. If it was a really quick meeting, perhaps that's indicative of how quick we could get through this.
The risk, of course, you always run is you talk longer than the actual time it might have taken to do the actual report. But having said it, that's a question for Civic Works. And so any thoughts, opinions? Mr. Squire?
I've had nothing.
Mr. Lehman?
Sorry, Your Worship. I've had nothing requested to be pulled. There is one item that might have some conversation around the bike share, but I don't see that as a highly contentious thing, as it will be coming back in January. So it should be pretty quick, but you never know.
I would entertain a motion then, rather than make an arbitrary decision, which I never do. I would ask, is someone prepared to make a motion one way or the other with respect to this break? Let's do this quickly, please. Councillor Turner.
Your Worship, I'll move that we continue through.
Seconder? Seconded by Councillor Van Meerbergen. We've heard some comments to the contrary. Does this deserve any more or require any more debate? Failing that, you know the motion on the floor. Let's vote.
Closing the vote and the motion carries 10-5.
Councillor Lehman.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to put the 12th report of the Civic Works Committee on the floor. As I said, I've had no requests for any items to be pulled. Speak now or forever hold your peace.
Any items which should be dealt with separately? I think that's how we phrase it, actually. This council will speak now and speak often, usually. I see nothing being requested to be pulled. Comments or questions then with respect to what is now on the floor? Councillor Turner.
Sorry.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just really briefly, thanks to the committee for passing or recommending the amendments to the traffic and parking bylaws. There's one specific stretch on Springbank in front of the medical center. The motion here is to extend the no stopping zone. This has been significantly problematic with respect to a crosswalk that's there, and delivery trucks often stop in that area and create a visual obstruction on that crosswalk as people mount the hill. So I think this will go a long way to improving safety along that corridor.
Thank you. Other comments or questions? Seeing none, we are voting on the 12th report of the Civic Works Committee. All items, I'll turn your attention to the screen.
Closing the vote and the motion carries 15-0.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Lehman. Much more pleasant than Councillor Squire to deal with from time to time, but Councillor Squire, you've been pretty good.
I don't take offense.
None presumed. I'll turn your attention to 9.1, the 15th report of council in closed session. Councillor Lewis, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I am pleased to rise and report out on the 15th report of the council in closed session. Your council in closed session reports that on the recommendation of the Managing Director, Corporate Services and City Treasurer, Chief Financial Officer, on the advice of the Manager of Realty Services with respect to the city-owned industrial land located on the west side of Innovation Drive in Innovation Park, Phase 1, containing an area of approximately 5.5 acres, more or less, subject to survey, being comprised of Part Block 3, Plan 33M-54, being part of Parts 1 and 5, Plan 33R-18258 as outlined on the location map. The offer submitted by 164-39304 Alberta Limited, the purchaser, to purchase the subject property from the city at a purchase price of $385,000, reflecting a sale price of $70,000 per acre, be accepted. And that on the recommendation of the Managing Director, Corporate Services and City Treasurer, Chief Financial Officer, with the review and concurrence of the Managing Director of Parks and Recreation, on the advice of the Manager of Realty Services, with respect to the lease of the commercial space known as Dundas Place Fieldhouse, located at 177-179 Dundas Street, that the following actions be taken. A, the lease agreement between the Corporation of the City of London and Westang Home Services under numbered company 2162538 Ontario Inc. as Schedule A be approved, and B, that financing for this lease be approved as set out in the source of financing report hereto as Appendix A. And that on the recommendation of the Managing Director, Corporate Services and City Treasurer and Chief Financial Officer, and on the advice of the Manager of Realty Services, with respect to the property located at 332 Warrencliffe Road North, being approximately 0.21 acres, further described as part lots 5, 6, and 7, Plan 434W, as designated Part 2, Plan 33R7913, save and except for Part 1, Plan ER 11-15-59-7, as in PIN 0824802234, that the offer submitted by Kiho Chung and Jihong Sun Lee to purchase the subject property from the city for the sum of $981,000 be accepted. And that on the recommendation of the Manager, Director of Corporate Services, City Treasurer, and Chief Financial Officer, with the review and concurrence of the Manager of Business Services, on the advice of the Manager of Realty Services, the lease attached as Schedule A between the city and Centennial House Limited, the landlord, for the lease of approximately 1,281 square feet of usable space located at 520 Wellington Street, Unit 4, for a term of 5 years and 6 months for the city's building division service area at a base semi-gross rent of $7.75 per square foot for the first 2 years, $8 per square foot for years 3 and 4, and $8.25 per square foot for year 5 be approved. And finally, that on the recommendation of the Acting Director of Human Resources, Civic Administration, be directed to undertake all administrative acts that are necessary in order for the Mayor and City Clerk to obtain the necessary authorization to execute the collective agreement for the years 2017 to 2018, appended as Appendix C to the staff report dated August 13, 2019, pursuant to the interest arbitration award dated August 15, 2018, between the Corporation of the City of London and the Service Employees Union International Local 1 Canada.
Thank you. I miss Councillor Sully. Thank you. Is there?
I cautioned you to break for dinner first.
Fair point. Is there? Well said. What is there a seconder?
Second.
Councillor Hillier. All right. Any comments, questions? See none. We'll call the vote.
Councillor Van Meerbergen.
I'll manually vote yes.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 15-0.
Thanks, Councillor Lewis. The other 9.1 under added reports is the 17th report of the Strategic Priorities Committee. I'll call on Deputy Mayor Helmer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've taken a look over the report from yesterday's meeting. I think I can put everything on the floor except for 2.2, clauses A, B, and E. I noticed that Councillor Hillier voted against those, so I think he probably still wants to. And then 4.1, clause D, there were two separate votes on that, and they were both split, so I think probably pulled that one. But everything else, I think, was unanimous that made it through.
Bear with us. Bear with us.
Just to repeat that again, 2.2, A, B, and E, and then 4.1, D, as in David.
So we'll deal with A, B, and E together as one separate item. So everything now you're asked to consider, unless anyone wishes anything else separated for consideration. So you're being asked to vote on all items except 2.2 A, B, and E, and 4.1 D. Any comments or questions? No. The clerk has a question.
Through the chair, would it be possible for council to vote on 2.2 and 4.1 separately from the consent motion? If they're amenable to that, this would be a lot easier.
Deputy Mayor?
That's what I'm suggesting. That's great.
Thank you. So to be clear then, we're excluding 2.2, 4.1. Any other comments or questions? Then let's turn your attention to the screen and call the vote.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 15-0.
Deputy Mayor Helmer.
Okay, I'll put the clause from 2.2 that there was a split vote on. So that was A, B, and E as in Edward. But the vote yesterday was 14-1.
Clerk?
Through the chair, because the vote on the item that was originally considered Part E failed, it does not form part of the final recommendation going forward. So there's only, on 2.2, there's only parts A, B, C, and D as the recommendation out of committee. Numbered.
Just to be clear, I'm reading the numbers off the report that is on our table. 2.2E says the civic administration be directed to examine the development of affordable housing consistent with the city service manager's legislative responsibility. I believe it passed 14-1. So if we want to have a different reference number, that's no problem.
It became C.
Clerk, do you want to respond, please?
Through Mr. Mayor, E became D because one of the clauses failed, so we rejigged the numbering.
Why don't the clerks take over and put the clauses on the floor and just tell us which ones they are? And then we'll be very clear when we're voting what we want to support and what we don't. There we go. Sure.
Okay. Clerks, we're going to give you that opportunity, then we'll hear from Councillor Van Holst in a moment.
Thank you. I'm
in a moment. We got to put it on the floor first, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, what I'm understanding is being put on the floor for 2.2 is only Part C at this time, which is the civic administration be directed to work with London and Middlesex Community Housing and to investigate, address, and reduce the vacancy within their housing portfolio. And then the request is that Part A, Part B, and Part D be called separate. That's my understanding. Is that correct? So what would be put on the floor right now is 2.2 Part C, which is that the civic administration be directed to work with London and Middlesex Housing to investigate, address, and reduce the vacancy rate within the housing portfolio. That's what will be on the floor right now.
Councillor Van Holst, before we, let's hear what you have to say, please.
Thank you. I'm happy to support this, but I'll ask when we get to the others that be separate. That's the one that the only one I'll vote against.
So noted, thank you. So we're now voting on 4.1C. I know we're chewing this up a little bit. 2.2C, for clarity purpose. It's C only, and that has been read to you. So any other comments or questions? Then we'll turn your attention to the screen as we vote.
Closing the vote, and the motion carries 15-0.
So clerk, since you're bringing these forward, why don't you just carry on, please, on the next?
Through your worship, what will be placed on the floor is 2.2A, which is Appendix A as appended to the staff report dated August 26, 2019. City of London Service Review of service delivery for housing be received for information. And Part D, which reads, the civic administration be directed to examine the development of affordable housing consistent with the city's service manager legislative responsibilities and report back on a recommended course of action. It being noted that the SPPC received a communication dated August 21st from C. Butler, a communication dated August 22nd from A. Udshorn, and received a verbal delegation and submission from the London and Middlesex Community Housing.
So noted. This is 2.2A and D. Any comments or questions from colleagues? Seeing none, let's turn your attention to the screen as we vote.
Councillor Morgan. Closing the vote, and the motion carries 15-0.
And back to you again, clerk, for the final point.
Your worship, on the floor is 2.2B, which reads, the civic administration be directed to determine next steps and actions based on the analysis and potential courses of action identified in the KPMG report dated August the 12th, 2019, with respect to the review of service delivery of housing.
Thank you. It is now on the floor. Comments or questions? Councillor Van Holst.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm going to vote against this one, not because I don't want our staff to move forward with some plans, but I drew to the attention of council some of the limitations of the report and where I believe more information was needed. And since we're basing this decision on a report where that I think needs some further information, I don't think we're going to get as good a recommendation as we might. However, I'll trust staff to look into, for instance, the stakeholders' opinions about this, et cetera, and perhaps what Toronto is doing, and as well as how we might have met the projections that we had, and of course, finally, address the risk that was in here, which was owning and building properties, which was the original intent of the HDC. So I'll leave that with staff, but vote against this because of that problem.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll turn your attention to the screen as we vote.
Closing the vote, and the motion carries 14-1.
Deputy Mayor Helmer.
Well, apologies, colleagues, for that little snafu, and thank you for the clerks directing us back to the right clauses. I'll put 4.1 A, B, and C on the floor. Believe this can all be voted on at the same time, and then D will be next, which is about the strategy report back on where the 7.3 million should be allocated.
Thank you. So noted. Comments or questions for the first components on the floor? Seeing none, I'll turn your attention to the screen as we vote.
Councillor Squire? Closing the vote, and the motion carries 15-0.
I'll put 4.1D on the floor. Again, this is the direction to staff to report back with the strategy. I believe the vote was 13-2 yesterday.
Comments or questions? Seeing none, we'll call the question.
Closing the vote, and the motion carries 13-2.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Helmer. Colleagues, I'm not aware of any deferred matters. I've not been made aware of any inquiries, and I've not been made aware of any emergent motions, which takes us to bylaws. I am going to look for a mover and seconder for the introduction and first reading of bill numbers 314, 315, 317 to 334, and added bills numbers 336 to 340. And colleagues, the reason there will be two additional votes is due to some conflicts of interest that have been declared, just to be absolutely clear. Is there a mover? Councillor Hillier, pardon me, and seconded by Councillor Van Meerbergen. Comments or questions? Oh, no discussion on this. Let's just vote. I knew that.
Councillor Van Holst. Closing the vote, the motion carries 15-0.
This time we will allow for discussion. I'm looking for a mover and seconder for second reading of bills numbers 314, 315, 317 to 334, and added bills numbers 336 to 340. Look for a mover, please. That would be Councillor Hopkins, seconded by Councillor Lehman. Comments, questions, discussion? Seeing none, I'll turn your attention to the screen as we vote.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 15-0.
For third reading and enactment of bills numbers 314, 315, 317 through 334, and added bills numbers 336 to 340. I'll look to my right side to have a mover, Deputy Mayor Helmer. Is there a seconder? Councillor Cassidy. Call the vote.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 15-0.
Thank you, colleagues. Now to deal with Bill number 316, called separately due to conflict as declared by Councillor Turner. First reading, the introduction of first reading of Bill number 316. I'll look for a mover, please. Councillor Van Meerbergen, seconded by Councillor Kayabaga. Call to vote.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 14 with 1 recuse.
For second reading of Bill 316, I'll look for a mover, please. Councillor Van Hol, seconded by Councillor Cassidy. Any discussion? Then we'll call the vote.
Councillor Lehman. Closing the vote, the motion carries 14 with 1 recuse.
For third reading and enactment of Bill number 316, I'll look for a mover, please. Councillor Pelosi, seconded by Councillor Lehman. Call the vote, please.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 14 with 1 recuse.
Colleagues, the final bill is 335, called separately due to the conflict as declared by Councillor Morgan. For the introduction and first reading of Bill number 335, I'll look for a mover, please. Councillor Cassidy, seconded by Councillor Van Holst. Call the vote, please.
Closing the vote, and the motion carries 14 with 1 recuse.
For second reading of Bill number 335, we'll look for a mover, please. Councillor Lehman, seconded by Councillor Kayabaga. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question.
Closing the vote, and the motion carries 14 with 1 recuse.
Colleagues, for third reading and enactment of Bill number 335, I'll look for a mover, please. Councillor Van Holst, seconded by Councillor Hillier. I'll turn your attention to the screen as we vote.
Closing the vote, and the motion carries 14 with 1 recuse.
Thank you. To adjourn this meeting, I would look for a mover, please, with enthusiasm. Councillor Turner, seconded by Councillor Van Merbergen. I'll turn your attention to the screen as we vote.
Just for old school's sake, I'll vote manually yea.
Folks, in the interests of just some technology, we're just going to look for a called vote. All those in favor of adjournment? Seeing none to the contrary, meeting is adjourned. Thank you all, and thank you, staff. And thank you, gallery.